Without further ado, let's bring back our welcomed guest. Hi, LA. You're very welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Hey, great to see you again, LA, as well, in real time as well. So, wow, LA, since we spoke last, there's so much has gone on in the world. I guess let's launch straight into it. Let's run straight. What is going on? What is going on with this bronze Baphomet statue, LA? I'm stupefied, LA. I'm stupefied that this has gone on. Comments on this, LA? Dare we say?
Absolutely. In fact, yeah. I mean, I blogged about it today. As you know, not coincidentally. I mean, I was the subject of the blog with a picture. lamarzulli.wordpress.com. You can go back and check it out for yourself.
Yeah.
Look, when we have on the Grammys in this country, you've got AC/DC singing "Highway to Hell." Everybody in the audience has been given these plastic glow-in-the-dark devil horns. They're all wearing the devil horns, right? The camera pans over the audience as far as you can see, glowing red devil horns. Then it cuts to the front, very front row, and there's Katy Perry giving the Baphomet, horn sign like this and flicking her tongue out. I mean, what are we to make of this? And then right after that, we see Kanye West do something, some mumbo-jumbo around this. He's like on a platform, and there's a hole in the platform like a pit. And there's smoke coming out of the pit, and there's light coming out of it. Right after that, it cuts into the Madonna sequence. And Madonna has all these basically Baphomet men, dancers, dressed up with the huge, Baphomet horns. And they're all running to the stage. And then Madonna, at the end, basically, it's like a satanic ritualistic sacrifice. Now, if people say that's all in good fun and it's not. I mean, there's a Luciferian agenda that's alive and well on this planet. And the fact that the Baphomet statue is being unveiled in Detroit, and the title of my blog today was, "This is how far down the rabbit hole we are." This is how far down the rabbit hole we are. Sure. It's blatantly displayed in the Grammys. It's blatantly displayed at American football time, and specifically the Super Bowl. I mean, it's in our faces constantly. Unless the Christian church stands up and begins to push back, all is lost.
Yeah, it's say goodbye to Cam. This is going into, I'm stupefied that there's actual tangible statues of Baphomet being worshipped now. It's like, it's in the public domain. It's not just something elusive in the movie industry now, or it's like, are we going to start honoring statues of Baphomet? I mean, have we dropped their brains out? Is that where the public's going?
This is literally a sign of one of the signs that's in a 2,000-year-old prophecy, or very close to a 2,000-year-old prophecy, which states that in the end of days, in the last days, end times, they will leave the truth and go after the doctrines of demons. That's specifically what it says. And that's exactly what we see happening now. We've got in America, if you go back, let's say 50 years, there wasn't a palm reader in every town or a psychic in every town. They are everywhere. In almost every city, every town, you'll see a shingle, palm reader, fortune teller, tarot, whatever. I mean, this thing is, we are being inundated with it. Eastern mysticism came in the 60s, unfortunately with the Beatles. But that's what brought it into America. In the 60s, as Russ Dizdar would say, we had the largest explosion of occult literature, in the 20th century. I mean, the occult literature that came into our country was just unprecedented. And so people, let's say, are always talking about, knowledge, and the serpent, denotes wisdom, or seeing the image of the serpent. Let's say when we go to Chichen Itza, we see an undulating serpent during the solstices, during the winter and summer solstices. They constructed the pyramid so that serpent undulates as it goes down, appears to be undulating and going down the pyramid. Well, why the serpent? And this is the deal. Yes, there's wisdom there, but where is the wisdom from? This is one of my books that's in the pipeline that we're working on.
Wow.
And this wisdom is from the second heaven, is from the fallen cherub. And there's always a price that goes with that wisdom. So you got all these new agers are going, oh, the serpent denotes wisdom. But that's true. They get part of it right. But they don't understand the implications. One more thing, let me just add to it.
Sure.
When Moses shows up with Aaron in Pharaoh's court, most of us know the story. Moses murders his Egyptian. He flees out to the desert. He was raised by Pharaoh, for crying out loud. He flees out to the desert because he's killed an Egyptian, and he's blood on the guy's hands. I mean, there's no way around it. He's there for 40 years. In that 40-year period of time, he changes a whole lot. From a young man, let's say in his 20s, now he's in his 60s, maybe even a little older. And everything begins to change with Moses at this point in time. So God of the Bible, the real God, in my opinion, says to Moses and Aaron, go to Pharaoh's court. So they go to Pharaoh's court. What most people don't understand and overlook in the biblical narrative is there is a full-blown occult paradigm, occult religion already in operation going, and it's global. It's not only in Egypt, it is global. And that's what they're up against because, they go there and Moses, most of us know the story, but we fail to see the implications. Moses throws down a staff and it becomes a serpent. And the Egyptian magicians go, well, that's no big deal. They throw down their staffs and that becomes a serpent.
Sure.
So, we see this full-blown occult paradigm already in operation thousands of years ago. Where is it from? Where is the source? And now, fast forward to 2015, Baphomet in Detroit. Need I say more?
Yeah, I just came back from the British Museum, LA, and London, and they must have a seriously large collection on every culture from Assyria, Greeks, Romans, Minoans. There isn't a culture in that museum, LA, where you see the serpent on a vessel or the serpents being worshipped, and it's there in the record. Nearly every culture you'll see some sort of representation for the serpent. I think you're right, LA. I think at some point there was a trade-off knowledge for the serpent knowledge or the serpent wisdom. But everything comes at a price, no matter what it is in this world. So what that price is, I think people have to at least ask the question. They have to at least address that question, Elaine. They're not even addressing the question. They're not even taking it into account.
They just lay down and who cares? What's for dinner tonight? And,
that's where we're at. LA. Where are we at in the world? Let's talk about the Watcher series. It's still going. I believe you're on season 8. Is that correct?
No, we're actually working on 9.
9 now. Wow, I can't keep up with you, bro.
We're in post-production on 9. We've done all of our interviews, and in fact, this week we'll probably cut the open. There's a few things that we have to talk about that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
But, we'll address that in Watchers 9.
Wow.
Lots going on.
Did you ever see the success of that going that long, LA?
Well, we definitely hit a nerve. In a similar fashion that the History Channel Ancient Alien series, I think, is on season 7 or season 8, going into season 8 maybe. We don't have a tenth of their budget.
Yeah.
And we can only do 1 or 2 watchers a year.
Yeah.
And yet we hit a nerve. We definitely have a cult following.
Yeah.
And people love what we're doing. People are holding watchers parties all over the United States. So, it's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. There's a thirst for the knowledge, LA. There's a serious thirst for the knowledge. I guess the thing to say is, LA, you don't just sit around. You're out there in the field looking for this evidence. Let's talk about some of that, LA. I mean, let's talk about some of the places you've been for season 8. You've dug up some wonderful evidence. Unfortunately, that takes a lot of travel and it takes a lot of effort. I think that's probably the effort that you're putting in and the results that you're getting. Yeah, you've got a long distance to go. You've got a lot of people to track down. But the evidence is there. It may be fragmented and it may be complex, but the stuff's still in the record worthy of finding, LA.
Well, going to Peru, going to Catalina Island, which is, in my backyard, but still going there and making a deal with the museum to be able to go and look at pictures. I mean, what I found in Catalina Island was basically groundbreaking. I mean, we discovered real photographic proof of not only 1, but more than likely 2, basically 9-foot giants that are not supposed to be there. Mm. Not only that, but one of the giants has like a 6 finger. That whole 6 finger type deal. It's just unbelievable. I can't do it, but wow. I mean, it's plain as day. That giant was 6 fingers, and that ties back into the Native American oral tradition of tall redhead giants with 6 fingers. I mean, it's one thing to hear the oral tradition. It's another thing to actually look at it in a photograph and go, oh my gosh, there they are. Not only that, but in Catalina, we saw elongated skulls that aren't supposed to be there. We found a cone head from a child that would look very similar to what we saw down in South America. And of course, that's separated by thousands of miles. So yeah, I mean, there's stuff. There was an elongated skull just recently found in Russia near the Kazakhstan border. And of course, immediately archaeologists go, well, it was obviously cradle headboard. You don't know that. You don't know that. And you're just making, a statement that it was cradle headboarded because that's what fits your paradigm. What if it's not? And have you done DNA testing? And did anyone measure the femur? It doesn't look like it's a giant, but the fact that we see these cone heads or these elongated skulls all over the planet. And I find that absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's evidence for both. There's the cradle headboarding, and then there's the originals, the natural cone-headed, elongated skulls. Just because there was mimicking going on, you don't just write everything off as the mimicking process, because it was a mimicking. I think there's probably more evidence for normal skulls, these elongated natural skulls, than there is for the cradle boarding. I don't even see that as a viable argument, LA.
Well, I'm going to show you something here once I pull it up.
Sure.
It's really very, very interesting. This is from 1842. It's a lithograph. And this debate, I think we've talked about this already, but a lot of people haven't seen that show, so it's always good to kind of review. The bottom line is this debate was raging in academia well over 180 years ago, 1842, and there was a group. The majority said, "Oh, it's all cradle headboarding," and there were other people going, "Well, not so fast, or we're not so sure." And this team of archaeologists allegedly discovered a mummy, and upon opening the mummy bundle, they realized it was a female who was pregnant. Well, they opened her up. I mean, remember, it's a mummy, so they opened up the mummy to see what the fetus looked like. This is a lithograph from it.
Wow.
And this was they discovered it was a 7-month-old fetus still in the womb with an elongated skull. You can't do that. You can't do that. And they wrote about it in 1842, but the debate rages. Meanwhile, as far as we know, no proper DNA testing has been done of the elongated skulls in Peru as far as we know. We are still trying to get permits to get these things out, and it's just like nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's maddening.
DNA testing is key to this, LA, because we have biological material. I know you're trying to get that done, LA. What's the difficulties in the process, first of all, of testing the DNA, and what's the difficulties in getting a sample to test as well?
Well, the sample, we're talking about, and this was what's maddening. Every day, the Wakaros, the grave robbers, go into the graveyards in Peru, and the entire country of Peru is one large archaeological dig site. I mean, it is. Wherever you go, there's stuff. So every day, the Wakaros, the tomb robbers, go in to tombs, some of these things which are thousands of years old, and just raid them. Throw all the stuff that they don't want, look for the gold, the jewels, the tapestries, and sell those in the black market. That's what they do. All we're trying to do is take a small amount of material from the existing skulls that are in Senior Juan's Paracas History Museum and do DNA testing for that. And you would think we're trying to raid, the Peruvian treasury. It's maddening, because every day millions of dollars worth, or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars worth, are off on the black market. We're not interested in any of that. We want small material, bone material, hair samples, decayed tissue, to do DNA samples. And you would think, like I said, we're asking to, take back half the country with us. It's just maddening. So hopefully in September, we're working with one Peruvian archaeologist down there, and hopefully this gentleman will be able to get us the permit, and we'll go down and get the material.
The DNA is the real gold, LA. That's the real gold.
It will let us know what we're looking at. Preliminary DNA testing was done from a film company in the UK, your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And the other one was done from a late Lloyd Pye in this country.
Yeah.
They both took the samples out illegally. The film company from the UK were examining an artifact by the name of Waikiki. It's, in fact, let me see. I probably don't have it in front of me, or maybe I do. No, it's in Alma Trail 1. But in Alma Trail 1, do I? Okay, let's just move on. In Alma Trail 1, there's this very elongated skull. I mean, extremely elongated. And that skull, in fact, I may have it. Let me while I'm talking, I'll look for it.
Sure.
But what's interesting about this is the one that the British film company, took a small sample back and had it analyzed. And of course, what they found was that the skull, here it is. No, that's it gives you an idea. This isn't the one I'm talking about, but this gives you an idea.
Wow.
Very elongated skull like this. And so when they did the DNA testing, the mitochondrial DNA, which of course comes from the mother's side, was human, which is kind of what we expect, not all across the board, but that's okay, that makes sense. But the nuclear DNA, which comes from the father's side, completely unknown primate. No one knew what this thing was. That's telling. That was the UK, and of course, they published this stuff in their film. Nobody cares, James. Nobody gives a flying hoot about it.
Yeah.
And Lloyd Pye's testing was a little different. The mitochondrial DNA was completely unknown. It wasn't Homo sapiens sapien, Neanderthal, Denisovan. It was completely unknown. So when we start looking at artifacts, these elongated skulls, I mean, what are we to think? And it just makes you wonder, what we're really looking at here.
It's unbelievable. I got this vision, LA, that, and I don't mean to bash archaeologists, because there is good archaeologists out there, and there's some open-minded archaeologists too. But for the best part, the institutionalized archaeologists, I have visions of them, LA, when they come up with something mysterious and interesting, they just put their heads into the sand and they ignore it because they can't fit it. And I had this, bizarre vision of them just putting their head in shame that they don't know the knowledge or something. It's bizarre. Maybe it's more surreptitious than that. I mean, there's a lot of, just in the chat box here, there's a lot of people talking about the Smithsonian. They actually have this, they have this persona now of being these conspiratorial agency, who's just scrubbing out the record.
Look, when I was out in Catalina, I discovered this picture. This is Ralph Glidden standing in the grave, a recently excavated pit grave.
I can see the skeleton.
9-foot.
You can see it. That's massive, It's massive.
It's massive. And we had it analyzed by 3 different people who digitized the photograph, ran it in their program. They all put it around 9 feet. Okay. So we went back. Richard Shaw and myself went back to Catalina about 3 or 4 months ago, because we were doing a segment which we have not aired yet.
Yeah.
And we walked in, and to our absolute amazement, this is what we saw on the wall. Now, when I was there the last time, they had not used this photograph. It was in their archive. This is what they showed the public. This is what they showed the public.
LA, the sleight of hand trickery.
They cropped the giant out of the picture, and we've got it on film. We've got it on film. I show that to the audiences, and they just laugh. And there it is. I mean, it's like, and the reason why they're doing it, it's like damage control. Because what they'll say, they haven't said anything against me yet.
Yeah.
I let the cat out of the bag. I discovered the photograph. Nobody else did.
Yeah.
Now, when I got there, James, and your audience has to understand this, everything was cataloged. Everything was put in these museum boxes, and I'll show you what they look like. Everything, when I say everything, all the material were put in the boxes like this up on top. That's what I received. Mm-hmm. I'm not looking at this cache of records, from a trunk and pouring over. Everything's already been poured over. All these photographs I took photographs of were in plastic sleeves and manila envelopes.
Sure.
Other people looked at that, but they're not looking, through a biblical lens. They're not looking for giants. They're not looking for 6 fingers. They're not looking for elongated skulls. Excuse me.
Sure.
And so when I found that, I just went, oh my gosh. And I showed the curator, and he was blown away too. And I said, we got something here. And sure enough, we analyzed the photograph. Now that photograph didn't necessarily go viral, but it went all over the net. It is all over the net.
Yeah.
And it's my discovery. The Vieira brothers used that photograph to on their last the finale of their season, In Search of the Lost Giants, that was aired on the History Channel, and they interviewed me for that. And of course, I'm talking about the Nephilim, and immediately the History Channel switches that to the Darwinian paradigm. And so, well, that's Marzulli's theory, but this is what we're going to go with, which is these were Denisovans, or this is some sort of, branch in our evolutionary tree. I'm not an evolutionist. I don't believe in evolution. I think it's a bunch of nonsense. But, I digress. But what's interesting is you talk about the Smithsonian, and here it is, this little hole-in-the-wall museum in Catalina Island, and they cover up the giant. They crop the picture so the public can't see what was there. And that is so intellectually dishonest. They talk about science. We go where the evidence leads us. And they're all noble and, we're scientists, science. And it's just a bunch of nonsense. They go where the evidence leads them as long as that's the evidence that they want you to see. Just like the climate change nonsense that happened. Oh, the earth is getting warmer. We've got to do something. We've got to, have carbon taxes and blah, blah, blah. And here's all the science that we did. And they go in and they get ready to do it. Oops, and somebody leaks the emails. They fudged everything. They made it up. They actually threw the real evidence out the window because it didn't fit their model and just created some evidence out of thin air, basically, to promulgate climate change.
Sure.
I mean, it's just absolute nonsense.
Sure.
And the American people and the people of the world have a right to know. And I'll just show you what this thing looks like when you finally take it apart. When you stand these two guys next to each other, this is what you got. When you take the giant out, this is just one researcher.
Wow.
We rounded it down to 8'6". We weren't even sensationalistic. We could have rounded it up to 9'3". We didn't. We rounded it down to 8'6".
Yeah.
There's Ralph Goodman at 5'8". We know that measurement, and that's what the skeleton looks like. And we took it down to 8'6".
It's incredible.
I mean, just, plus or minus 3 inches. So we went down with it.
Yeah.
So
conservative.
Yeah.
Incredible. This part of the world too, I know in the Mediterranean basin in the island of Sardinia, there was people there reporting skulls and large bones being, you're probably familiar with this, LA. I'm preaching to the converted here, but I mean, I watched the documentary quite recently. All's left is a tooth, I think they have. Somebody has a tooth there, and granted, the tooth may be 30 to 40% bigger than a normal tooth, but it's a normal adult male tooth, so it's 40% bigger than the biggest tooth we have. In other words, so they leave that bit out though. LA, it's not like 40% bigger than an average tooth. It's 40% bigger than the biggest tooth we have. And even the dental surgeon turns around and says, this thing is like from a very large jawbone, and if the jawbone is big, well, then the skeleton's big. It's
sure
this is the stuff that we're looking for, but this stuff's not in the record now. I mean, this stuff's disappearing in Sardinia too.
And that tooth has disappeared, by the way.
It has?
No one knows. Yeah, as far as I know, that tooth has just conveniently disappeared. Oh, well, and you'll see this over and over again with the Smithsonian. When we read about the bones that are crated up and given to the Smithsonian, and then they're just lost. And the reason for this is, and I talk about this with verve, to use one of your favorite words across the pond, but I do, with passion and verve, because what this does, in my opinion, is it points back to the biblical narrative of the Nephilim. It points back to a supernatural incursion on this planet by otherworldly beings, and they're not extraterrestrials, they're interdimensional. That's why I'm so passionate about what I talk about, because it all points back to the biblical narrative. And if the Nephilim are true, then what about the rest of the book?
Yeah, this is an exciting part of biblical archaeology, because there is stuff in the record, LA, and it's like this race was either ethnically cleansed or genetically scrubbed out from the record, hunted down. I don't know. I don't know the details of what's happened to this race while they're gone. I think they've been relatively recent in the record, though. I mean, right up to Native American times. We have evidence. Maybe we can bring in that element, because I think in this part of the world where I'm at, LA, they've been long gone out of the record. but I think a tribe may have survived quite recently into America. Maybe you can bring in the Native American people on the mounds over there, LA.
Well, we're actually in an undisclosed location on private property. We're working with several archaeologists on a mound where we've been allowed, the state that we're in, we're allowed to dig that mound because it's on private property. Now, we haven't found anything, earth-shattering, and we're not even sure it's a burial mound, but it was a mound. We have found lots of arrowheads. We have found a couple of copper beads. I've carbon dated it at 2,000 years old, plus or minus 80 years in either direction. So it fits smack dab in the middle of the Hopewell culture. I mean, this is an active archaeological dig, and we're on it. And if we find a 9-footer in there, you better believe this will make national news. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And the first thing we'll do is run the DNA sample from, at least two different labs, possibly 3, to find out what we're looking at. But look, we hear this all the time from Native Americans. Chief Joseph Riverwind and I have talked about this. He's a Native American war chief. Taino, which is a tribe of Native Americans in the southeastern part of the United States, near Puerto Rico, Florida, that area. And, he talks about the giants, the legend of the giants, in many different tribes all across the country. Talk about it. From the East Coast clear out to the Chumash. And then where I am on the West Coast, Catalina Island is right outside Los Angeles, about 27 miles away from Los Angeles. And, to find pictures of a 9-footer there is absolutely astonishing. And here's something to think about, James.
Mm-hmm.
I am willing to bet you that there are other grave sites on Catalina which have not been looked at yet. Glidden didn't get them all. That's for certain.
Yeah.
He got a lot of them. Yeah. And this is 1919, 1921. So, it's almost 100 years ago. He was out there. But there's other islands in the Channel Islands which you're not even allowed to go on. The government controls them. So once again, it's like, look, the information, this is what I've discovered. The information is controlled. And I realize that sounds a lot like a conspiratology thing, but it's controlled. Wherever you go on the planet, you see the progression of Darwinism from the little chimp, kind of stooped over and walking on hind legs to modern man. But they never tell you how you get there. Well, over millions of years, evolution is very slow and methodical. No, it's not. It's not that way at all. There's microevolution. I understand that. We get little changes in DNA and we might get taller or our hair gets blonder, all that, but we're still human beings. Nothing on the planet that I'm aware of is changing into something else. It's just not happening. It's not there. Sure. And we know from the biblical narrative that every seed that every plant, every animal has reproduces its own kind. Penguins reproduce penguins. They don't reproduce hummingbirds. It doesn't work that way. And if Darwin had known about the deoxyribonucleic double helix spiral of life, the DNA molecular structure that was discovered by Watson and Crick, I think he would have rescinded his theory. Heck, Crick, the co-discoverer of the DNA, was a vexed man. We've talked about this before. The guy was a vexed man because he realized that no matter how many millions of years of prebiotic sop, just kind of this stuff just mixing around, there's no way you're going to create this just one protein, just one strand of protein, just complex DNA. There's no way. There's no way this thing's just going to spring into itself, or somehow it would be like taking, we've all heard this analogy, but it's true. Take a 747, stick it in the warehouse, take every part there and just mix it all up. And you're going to tell me in a couple of million years, somehow, that plane is just going to magically assemble itself? Nonsense. But that's what we're looking at here. And see, most people don't know this stuff. And once again, all the information is hidden. And, well, you're going to believe in the Darwinian theory or else you're an ignoramus. Well, why? When Ben Stein, let me close with this. When Ben Stein sits down with Richard Dawkins and he asks Dawkins, where did the first self-replicating molecule come from? Dawkins has no answer. And this is one of the premier evolutionists of both the 20th and the 21st century. He's got no idea of where the first self-replicating molecule comes from, nor does anyone else. And I understand that. Well, Stein throws him a lifeline, an intellectual lifeline, and says, well, where do you think it comes from? And all he can say is, which is circular reasoning, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
well, maybe millions of years ago in a galaxy far, far away, and I'm sort of tongue-in-cheek here, but that's what he's saying, a race of extraterrestrials, who themselves had to evolve to a high state of civilization by some sort of Darwinian process, created us and then seeded us through the galaxy. We wound up on planet Earth, and voila, here we are. That's all he's got. That's all he's got. And that begs the question immediately, where did they come from? And he doesn't know, nor does anyone else. The
Sure.
difference between our paradigms is this. In the biblical narrative, there's a thread of prophecy, which goes from Genesis to Revelation. A thread of prophecy. And it's called out with great specificity by someone outside our space-time domain. And whoever this is, call him whatever you want to, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He tells us what his name is, Yahovah. But God, the God of the Bible, calls out with great specificity future events. It's the only book like it on the planet that does so with 100% accuracy.
Incredible stuff, fella. Incredible. I remember reading I think it was a Vedic book. I think it's called Rethinking Darwin, and it's instrumental to the argument that you made. A lot of it's, I think Michael Cremo accredited some chapters to it, but from the scientist, my scientist training and engineering training, it showed you these small miniature biological mechanisms that go on just within the body itself, that they are so complex. They're the way blood cells migrate around, they have motorized action, and they're like literally like nanotech, micro engineering.
Yeah.
It's so, just within their own body, it is so mind blowing that it's the complexity. It's not even explained. Just even within our own body, that we can measure today. We're just coming up to break, so. Just for the webpage, you can go to capricornradio.com for the free archives and capricornmembers.com for the HD TV and MP3 archives. But for now, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back in just a moment. There is something majestic in the land of Ireland. This is known the world over. The Celtic Irish are descendants of the Tuatha De Danann, a mysterious, supernatural race of gods written about in ancient Irish Gaelic texts. This is the basis for all Irish mythology, and our megalithic ancestors are interlinked with these peoples. You have a chance to come and see these monuments and temples for yourself. The megalithic landscape is rich in the realms of myth, legend and wisdom. Come see all this on the most spectacular Sacred Sites tour in March 2016. The Sacred Sites and Equinox tour is not to be missed. Tour highlights include Grinnin of Ailloch Observatory, the Giant's Ring Henge and Dolmen, St. Patrick's Day special at St. Patrick's Ancient Chair, March 17th. Knockmany Passage Tomb linked to the Queen Maeve with special access. Beemore Temple Complex, Dunluce Castle, the Giant's Causeway, Beltany Stone Circle, Kilclooney Dolmen, and the Loughcrew Equinox Event Alignment. Of course, we will see the famous tombs of Newgrange, Noath and Doath, also Fornox Rock Art and Shamanic Chamber, Tara Hill Complex, and we're going to finish at the Tuatha De Danann's origins in the northwest of Ireland at Carrowkeel, dated 3500 BC, and the famous Carrowmore 5000 BC complex. Check out all the full itinerary on the Tours Events page for more details at jamesswagger.com. Welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your host James, and don't forget to check out the archives at capricornmembers.com. You can subscribe for membership, doing a lifetime membership deal at the moment. And of course you can still check out the free archives at capricornradio.com. And then HDTV shows as well on the Capricorn members page. But for now, Hi everybody, welcome back to Capricorn Radio and welcome back to Capricorn TV live streaming. LA, we're back on the show. Wow, what a heavy hitting first round there, LA. This is why I love talking to you, LA. We got some serious knowledge to talk about, and it's important to humanity. It's an important body of knowledge. I have another question from someone in the audience. I'll get to that in a minute. But I think, LA, what we talked about, that conspiratorial aspect. It is conspiratorial, but I think there's more conspiracy going on in our historical roots, in our history. History is always written by the victors. We know that. But
absolutely,
are they going to give us a version of history where we know ourselves, where we know who we are, we know where we come from, we know what's truly gone on in the past? No, it's been sanitized. It's been sanitized not just for the victors, but to the victors' followers. You know, they're just going to just write the history the way they want it. And that's a fact of life. You know, if you're going to find true history, you're going to get out there and dig it up yourself. You're just going to have to go looking for it. And that's the way I think people like yourself, LA, I think that's where it's at these days, because there is an alternative body of people out there digging up the research, doing it themselves. Brian Forster, for example, another great guy. I know you guys work close together. And it's sad. It's sad in a way that people have to independently go and try and find the stuff and then battle with the archaeologists or battle with the mainstream academic institutions. Sometimes so unfairly, to the point that it's a sad case that humanity's gone that way. But that is a fact of life. That is a fact of life. And I just want to stress that conspiratorial aspect, because we had a few questions on that. LA, quick question from Danny Forts. He says, LA, did you ever come across talk about Native Americans living close to a group of these giants in the 18th or 19th century in Nevada?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't written about it yet, but we were out there in Nevada at a place called the Lovelock Cave, which is in Nevada. We spent time talking to Paiute elders there, and what we found was absolutely incredible. The story, I've been out to the cave. It's the Lovelock Cave. In front of it is a dry lake bed, but you go back, maybe a couple of thousand years or even 1,000 years, and that was a lake. And in that lake were fish, and that place thrived. And as the Paiutes tell us, that there was a race of red-haired, cannibalistic giants that lived in the area that kept taking their women and children and basically eating them. That's what the Paiutes tell us. So there were some archaeological digs in that area, and I'll just going to show you something here.
Lovelock Cave. I see.
And this guy got here. This particular archaeologist, was here much later. He was not the first one to dig. This is some of what he found.
Oh, incredible! Strange schools again.
This book is from 1929, and Lovelock Cave.
Yep.
But when you go there, again, you're driving back into the middle of nowhere, and there were other sources said that they found a 12-footer in the dry lake bed, a 12-footer and a 10-footer in the dry lake. So there's all sorts of who knows what we're really looking at, right? But when we went there, and the reason why we went there was because these two researchers were out to the Lovelock Cave. And what it is, you have to understand this, just typical the way things are done. The Lovelock Cave originally, you would go in the entrance, and to the left and to the right would be the tunnels, would be the cave that went way back into the mountain. That's all been sealed up. That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's all sealed up. Can't go in there. So, the Army Corps of Engineers or whoever dynamited the place. The caves are no longer accessible. So can't go in there. And the artifacts were pulled out. And again, what artifacts were pulled out that, why can't we see these? What's going on? And there's all sorts of legends about that. So what that is now is you get there and you drive. It's a very barren area. It's a dry lake bed, and it's just it's a place for rattlesnakes and scorpions. That's what it is.
Gotcha.
You finally get there and you you're out in the middle of nowhere. There's a couple of signs there that give you the party line that these people that lived here, were hunter-gatherers, and they made some beautiful duck decoys, and, they hunted and fished, and, the typical party line. Nothing about what the Paiutes talk about. Nothing about what the Native Americans say. Their oral tradition somehow doesn't fit what the archaeologists want you to know, so that's completely out. The only way to find that out is to go to a Paiute elder, which is what we did, and get it right from the horse's mouth, as it were.
Yeah.
So we go there, and you climb up, and there's the entrance to the cave. It's still there. You go in the entrance, and you'll see the roof of the cave like an umbrella, and all around the cave. It's very dark inside. There's no lights. All they have is a deck, a viewing deck. So you walk in, you stand on the deck, you look around, you realize that the top of the cave looks like it's been scorched from a fire. But, we don't know. And that ties right into the Paiute legend, because what they did is they chased the giants into the cave and then piled sagebrush in front of the cave and wood and lit the thing on fire. And when the giants came out, they shot them.
Wow.
Now, that's what the Paiutes tell us. And when you go there, you see that blackened ceiling. But we were there because way back, remember, you got to go off the deck, take a flashlight, which most people don't have, and begin to explore the rock faces, which are still there. In this part of the cave, let's say, right in front of the cave, as you walk in, and right in front there's a wall, nothing. Mm-hmm. Way over to the left side, facing the deck, way over to the left side. And on one of the rocks, was a handprint on the rock.
Wow.
And the handprint was twice the size of me. Twice the size of mine. We've got pictures of it like this. Huge handprint. It gets even better. The guys who found it put it on their Facebook post. Mistake number one. When we got there, less than a month later, someone had completely chiseled it off the rock. It's no longer there. It's just like the Ralph Glidden picture, standing in the open tomb with the giant in front of him. Oops, cropped, thank you. And in that, I have two instances, which I'm doing. By the way, for those of you who are listening to this who are in America, on September 12th, the Nephilim Mounds Conference will be in Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
Gary Stearman, Russ Dizdar, Chief Joseph Riverwind, Fritz Zimmerman, and myself, all five of us, hours and hours and hours of packed full of information. And I'll be talking about not only the deliberate obfuscation of the 9-footer that we found on Catalina, but the deliberate obfuscation of yet another artifact that was, found in the Lovelock Cave, which conveniently has been chipped off or burned with acid, whatever. It's not there anymore. Mm-hmm. Not there. So, those are two that I've known.
Yeah, Fritz Zimmerman's a great guy. I had Fritz on the show before. I really like his work. A really dedicated researcher. He's provided...
Good guy.
The Nephilim Chronicles, awesome 2 books. He's provided a wealth of information there, LA. Inspiring for me too.
Absolutely.
Inspiring for me too to do a bit in this part of the world. LA... here, people are going to think, okay, you mentioned like the Army Corps coming in and there's talk about Army presence down in the Grand Canyon as well. It's hiding stuff down there. And people are going to say, why on earth would the military come in and hide this stuff? And this is for the people in the audience that out there aren't too sure about this information, or they're trying to wonder what the hell we're talking about. But they're not asking the right question, LA. It's always about asking the right question. If they would stop trying to give the right answer, they're trying to give the right answer, saying, well, why would they do this? Or why would, the army be? Well, the question they should be asking is, well, why would the military be so interested in some sort of historical artifact? It must be really telling, or it must be really indicative of something incredibly important if the military is involved. These are the questions we need to be asking. And if it's that important that the military is involved to cover up this evidence, or a governmental institution like the Smithsonian, which is a government institution, it tells you there's something incredibly important to humanity that they're trying to scrub out of the record.
The in Planet of the Apes, the very first one that they did.
Yeah.
There's it's a role reversal. The humans are stupid and the apes have all the intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And there's the Forbidden Zone, You can't go there. It's the forbidden zone. Don't go to the forbidden zone. You know, that whole deal, right? So, of course, the humans run into the forbidden zone. And, you know, I forget the lead ape or whatever. He's like putting his head, yes, we've known about it, but we can't tell them, you know, that whole thing. And there's the Statue of Liberty, you know, sunk in the sand, talking about a whole other civilization before that. In a similar way, that's where we are. I'll give you an example. I've never really been able to vet this story, although other people have come close to it. And this woman apparently was either born in New Zealand and came over to this country, or Australia and came over to this country to study. I forget which. All right. And she's over here and she's with the forestry, basically some sort of forestry, conservation corps, that type of deal. And they get this call a couple of decades ago, maybe 15, well, not a couple, about 15 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. There's this call. This is when someone wrote me this whole thing. And I traced it back and was able to talk to somebody allegedly who knew the woman. And, but it's a hearsay thing, but it's interesting anyway. And it's a very colorful story. But there was a massive rainstorm in the Southwest someplace. And there was flash flooding, and this flash flooding uncovered an ancient burial ground. And so these people were called in, and they went in and they crated up the skeletons. They were all giants, 6 fingers, red hair. And she went on the record, and they all had to sign like a non-disclosure agreement, NSA, National Security Agency. This is, top secret information. You're never to divulge anything. But she went, well, I'm not an American, and so she divulged the information when she got out of the States. Interesting. Never been able to vet it. However, we keep getting information like this from other sources. And, when I get information like this, I try to track it down with the limited resources that we have. I still try to track it down. That's why we're on this mound on private property in an undisclosed location, because we know that there's something going on with that mound. We don't know. We don't know exactly what it is, but, there's something going on.
Incredible stuff, LA. I only got a few questions left coming up the top of the hour.
Okay.
I want to talk about this bone, the Berg Occus femur in South Africa. This is incredible, LA. I mean, this is how far afield you're digging into this research, LA. Let's give us a little bit of background on this case.
Let me just do this real quick.
Sure.
On Skype interview, I'm interviewing my partner, texting my partner, so he won't bother us again.
You're fine.
The Berg Occus femur was found deep below the surface of the earth by miners. No one really knows how it got there. It's obviously, whoever this guy was is a very robust individual. Is it another 9-footer? Certainly could be. And the curator really of that museum came on. Let me see if I got a picture of it here. Came on the record with me, which was just incredible. And Bernard is his name, and Bernard, Zipfeld, the Berg Occus femur. This is what it looks like.
Wowzer.
Yeah. And, we're looking at a really big guy. And we had a great romp. We had this wonderful conversation, and it's all been transcribed. And here's the actual thing that Bernard's holding in his hand.
Gotcha.
He gave me pictures, and you can see this is the transcript is right there. Nothing's been edited. Nothing's been cherry picked. And we had a romp talking about evolution and the biblical narrative, and what are we looking at here, and where did this thing come from, and how old do you think it really is? I mean, it's just fascinating. But it's absolutely astounding and fascinating when you think about it, that here we've got a very large femur in a major university. And what was great about Bernard is he was open. I mean, he wasn't like, coming down on me or, oh, this is all crazy. He was going, well, if you can show me something, and that's why we sent him on the Trail of the Nephilim too, because here's our evidence of 9-footers on Catalina. Something's going on here. Elongated skulls. Something is going on, and we need to get to the bottom of it. Even look, if we're going to follow the truth, if we're going to believe in the truth, what is the truth? then we need to go where the evidence leads us. And why is it that the scientific community, and I'm painting with a very broad brush,
Sure.
but many in the scientific community are afraid to look at the evidence. Anything that goes against Darwinism, anything, and what's at stake here is this. You've got the supernatural and you've got the Darwinian theory. They don't work together. And the Darwinians do not believe in anything supernatural. I am a frank supernaturalist, but I'm not employed by a university. I have my own publishing company, Spiral of Life. We create our own DVDs. So I'm not chained, as it were, to academia. I'm not chained to a position in a university where if I go against the tide, and this is what's so important about Ben Stein's movie, Expelled, any mention of intelligence design, you lose your job in academia. You're immediately expelled from your university. You've just lost your tenure. And, if you haven't seen Ben Stein's movie Expelled, people need to see it. It should be required viewing once a year as a refresher course for people. That's how important a film that is. Because what he's pointing to, why there's a disparity between the paradigm, between the worldviews of Darwinism and the supernatural. And as a frank supernaturalist, I'm always looking for, how is it that the supernatural is interfacing with this planet? And it is everywhere, James, everywhere. It is all over the planet. It's not just located in one little area. We see signs of the supernatural literally everywhere on this planet.
Wonderful stuff, Ella. For me, I think the change at the tide is also that anthropologists, archaeologists, the information is not just in their hands anymore. I mean, some of this material, like look at the human anatomy, for example. There's people in the alternative history genre who aren't anthropologists and they aren't archaeologists, but they're able to investigate this stuff. You don't need to be, have a biology background to know the size of the human skeleton. What's a big bone, what's a small bone. We can take a femur and say, well, that's an average size, and this is, some of the material is digestible for public consumption. It's not rocket science, and I don't think that's what archaeology likes as well. I think perhaps there's an ego attributed with that as well, that they don't want
there is, absolutely.
And that's also another factor that we haven't discussed, and maybe a big or small part, I don't know. I definitely think there's a conspiratorial aspect, but I think there's also like an ego and a pride thing going on where other people are talking about their facts, although their facts are probably wrong, but they're talking about their territory, their facts. And, look at the history of the internet in the last 20 years, what's evolved. People go to the internet for their history now. They go to the internet for their truth. They go to the internet for the evidence. As soon as it's released on the internet, it's out there. It's done. It's gone. It can't be taken back. LA, what's new for you, I guess? You're going to come to the UK, I believe, next year. Is that right?
Well, we're trying to get a conference probably in May. We're still working out the details of that, and I would love to talk to you more about it, and I'll send you an email, and we'll start trying to push that through. But we're thinking about coming to the UK in May, which would just be fantastic.
Oh, awesome.
We'd love to do it. I mean, there's a lot of people over there that have no idea of this information, and that's what, would just be fantastic to talk about. So, yeah, I mean, we've got that. The new book, which I'd love to get back on your show and discuss it with you when it comes out, is called Days of Chaos. I've sort of taken a break from the archaeological work and now going back into the biblical prophetic text, where it says in the latter days there'll be wars and rumors of wars, famines, pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places. It's almost, I think it's close to 400 pages. And it's a lot of it's from the blog, but there's a lot of interviews. There's a lot of, what it's fascinating. I've been blogging for 8 years, and it shows a progression of all these things. And when taken as a whole, the wars and rumors of wars, the famines, pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places, signs in the heavens, the UFO activity, when taken all together, I believe it points to that we are in a window of time which is unprecedented. And we are headed towards something which prophetic literature describes as the time of Jacob's trouble.
Yeah. When's the release date for Days of Chaos then, LA?
Probably in September at the rate we're going. We're very close.
No, awesome.
It's in the editing process, yeah.
Oh, nice. Where do you get your energy from, LA? I want to bottle it and send some to me, will you? But, definitely have you back on for that, LA. Of course, if you are in the UK, you can check out some of the Nephilim architecture over here.
I want to and will. Stonehenge I was there as a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, thereabouts. And but didn't have what I have now.
Coming back with different eyes this time, LA.
Oh, completely.
Yeah, I've done the same.
All sorts of stuff in the UK.
It's funny, LA. I've done the same thing. I've been to all these megalithic monuments in my early 20s, and then I'm doing a second loop now. I'm doing a second loop of these with different eyes and a different, wider perspective. And I think that's what. I think a lot of people are looking at these megalithic monuments now. Another question from someone in the audience, actually. These mounds. Were they built over energy points? These mounds or Nephilim architecture, did they build them over energy points specifically for some sinister reason?
Well, yeah, I mean that's what we've come to believe, that this whole deal was, at one time, the grid was lit up. Mm-hmm. There was a natural grid that was part of the planet. Tesla talks about this, mm-hmm. that somehow he could send electricity. He knew how to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's very political of Tesla. Sure. But apparently he was able to, like in Wardenclyffe in New Jersey and even in Colorado. I mean, he was doing stuff that was just unprecedented. And Tesla was credited with many, many patents. In fact, even the invention of the radio. I mean, Tesla just was so far ahead of his time. The grid system, which we believe was global, may have emanated from the Great Pyramid in Giza.
Yeah.
The pyramid in Giza is not a tomb, with all due respect to Mr. Zawi Hawass. Mm-hmm. And all Zawi has to show me and everybody else, quit tap dance, and they'll never do it. Yeah. Here's the Zawi. Take the Zawi Hawass challenge, Mr. Hawass. With all due respect to you, sir, you're a lot smarter than I am. Okay, when it comes to Egyptians and mummies and Egyptology, I get that. You're way smarter than I am, and you can read hieroglyphs and I can't. I'm at a disadvantage. I bow to your superior intellect. However, I have one question for you. If you're listening to this, Mr. Hawass, how is it that they're able to transport, let's say this is a block, okay?
Yeah.
A megalithic block of granite from Aswan, 500 miles away, and transport this block down the Nile somehow, and then put it, which weighs, hundreds of tons, up into the Great Pyramid. How are the Egyptians or anyone else in the Neolithic era able to cut granite with copper saws? Show me that. Just show me that. Just show me how you can take a copper saw and cut granite blocks and bring them down the Nile and then lift them into place over the King's Chamber. Just show me that, and I'll be a believer. But mm-hmm. They never go there. Mm-hmm. They never talk about the granite blocks above the King's Chamber. And all these blocks are like this, and they're stacked up basically like railroad cars mm-hmm. over the King's Chamber. It is absolutely nutso. It's crazy. Could you do it in modernity? Sure you could. But you've got cranes and huge trucks and bulldozers and D9s and, all this other really sophisticated stuff to do that. You go back into the Neolithic, good luck. Mm. Good luck. And you remember, copper saws and copper chisels cannot cut granite blocks. And that's what we have over the Great Pyramid. This was not a tomb. It was something else. And I believe, as other people, that this was some kind of a power plant. We don't even know how it worked, but it emanated energy. And there's a connectivity between the Great Pyramid of Giza and other sites all the way out to Easter Island. It's like a straight line. What the heck are we looking at here?
You mentioned Chichen Itza earlier and the Pyramid of Kukulkan in Mexico. And just to draw a parallel to bring it back to what you just mentioned with the Great Pyramid is we have two pyramids, different parts of the globe. Both of them have acoustic effects at them. Both of them have astronomically aligned equinox events because the Great Pyramid has a shadow cast on it only on the equinox. And both pyramidal, obviously, the same system and body of knowledge is encompassed in these pyramids. Acoustics, astronomy, geometrical design. It's the same company, if you want to call it that, in terms of a nickname. It's the same hand of work, the same company.
No, I totally agree. There's a signature. And think about this. Mm-hmm. This knowledge arrives. And again, this is a book in the pipeline. The knowledge arrives complete. when you go to Corral, and I've been to this city, which is the
Oh
most
yeah.
ancient city in all the Americas. It's over 5,000 years old. Everything just springs up from the floor of 3 miles north of Lima in Peru, in this beautiful lush valley, river going by, absolutely just verdant to the nines. Amazing. There's no pre-existing culture. All of a sudden, boom, there's pyramids, a pyramidal complex. There's a pyramid of the sun, pyramid of the moon, astronomical alignments. I mean, there's architecture, advanced mathematics, building techniques, engineering, art. I mean, come on. Where does it come from? Where does it come from? And when I first got to Corral and walked into the city, I looked around and went, oh my gosh, this reminds me of Teotihuacan, Mexico. And my guide just kind of went, yes, but this is much earlier. There is a similarity. And I'm going, well, of course there's a similarity. As you said, to use your words, it's the same company that's involved.
Sure. LA, we're at the top of the hour. It's been absolutely awesome talking to you today. Always a quick hour with you, LA. We're going to talk off air a little bit as well. We've got some interesting things to talk about. Yeah, but let's put our heads together. Let's get you over to the UK. Let's get some promotion for that. I'd love to see you over here, LA. I think you get a warm welcome here, and there's plenty of research for you to do here, LA, when you get here. So, but for now, lamarzulli.net for today. Please see the success of that going that long, LA.
Well, we definitely hit a nerve. In similar fashion that the History Channel Ancient Alien series, I think, is on season 7 or season 8, going into season 8 maybe. We don't have a tenth of their budget, and we can only do 1 or 2 watchers a year. And yet we fit a nerve. We definitely have a cult following. And people love what we're doing. People are holding watchers parties all over the United States. So, it's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. There's a thirst for the knowledge, LA. There's a serious thirst for the knowledge. I guess the thing to say is, LA, you don't just sit around. You're out there in the field looking for this evidence. Let's talk about some of that, LA. I mean, let's talk about some of the places you've been for season 8. You've dug up some wonderful evidence. Unfortunately, that takes a lot of travel and it takes a lot of effort. I think that's probably the effort that you're putting in and the results that you're getting. Yeah, you've got a long distance to go. You've got a lot of people to track down. But the evidence is there. It may be fragmented and it may be complex, but the stuff's still in the record worthy of finding, LA.
Well, going to Peru, going to Catalina Island, which is, in my backyard, but still going there and making a deal with the museum to be able to go and look at pictures. I mean, what I found in Catalina Island was basically groundbreaking. I mean, we discovered real photographic proof of not only one, but more than likely 2, basically 9-foot giants that are not supposed to be there. Not only that, but one of the giants has like a 6 finger. That whole 6 finger type deal. It's just unbelievable. I can't do it, but wow. I mean, it's plain as day. That giant was 6 fingers, and that ties back into the Native American oral tradition of tall.
Without further ado, let's bring back our welcomed guest. Hi, LA. You're very welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Hey, great to see you again, LA, as well, in real time as well. So, wow, LA, since we spoke last, there's so much has gone on in the world. I guess let's launch straight into it. Let's run straight. What is going on? What is going on with this bronze Baphomet statue, LA? I'm stupefied, LA. I'm stupefied that this has gone on. Comments on this, LA? Dare we say?
Absolutely. In fact, yeah. I mean, I blogged about it today. As not coincidentally. I mean, I was the subject of the blog with a picture. lamarzulli.wordpress.com. You can go back and check it out for yourself.
Yeah.
Look, when we have on the Grammys in this country, you've got AC/DC singing "Highway to Hell." Everybody in the audience has been given these plastic glow-in-the-dark devil horns. They're all wearing the devil horns, right? The camera pans over the audience as far as you can see, glowing red devil horns. Then it cuts to the very front row, and there's Katy Perry giving the Baphomet, horn sign like this and flicking her tongue out. I mean, what are we to make of this? And then right after that, we see Kanye West do something, some mumbo jumbo around this. He's like on a platform, and there's a hole in the platform, like a pit. and there's smoke coming out of the pit and there's light coming out of it. Right after that, it cuts into the Madonna sequence. And Madonna has all these basically Baphomet men, dancers dressed up with the huge, Baphomet horns, and they're all running to the stage. And then America in the 60s, as Russ Dizdar would say, we had the largest explosion of occult literature. I mean, in the 20th century. I mean, the occult literature that came into our country was just unprecedented. And so people, let's say, are always talking about, knowledge and the serpent, denotes wisdom, or seeing the image of the serpent. Let's say when we go to Chichen Itza, we see an undulating serpent during the solstices, during the winter and summer solstices. They constructed the pyramid so that serpent undulates as it goes down, appears to be undulating and going down the pyramid. Well, why the serpent? And this is the deal. Yes, there's wisdom there, but where is the wisdom from? This is one of my books that's in the pipeline that we're working on.
Wow.
And this wisdom is from the second heaven, is from the fallen cherub. And there's always a price that goes with that wisdom. So you got all these new agers are going, oh, the serpent denotes wisdom. But that's true. They get part of it right. But they don't understand the implications. One more thing, let me just add to it.
Sure.
When Moses shows up with Aaron in Pharaoh's court, most of us know the story. Moses murders an Egyptian. He flees out to the desert. He was raised by Pharaoh, for crying out loud. He flees out to the desert because he's killed an Egyptian, and he's blood on the guy's hands. I mean, there's no way around it. He's there for 40 years. In that 40-year period of time, he changes a whole lot. From a young man, let's say in his 20s, now he's in his 60s, maybe even a little older. And everything begins to change with Moses at this point in time. So God of the Bible, the real God, in my opinion, says to Moses and Aaron, go to Pharaoh's court. So they go to Pharaoh's court. What most people don't understand and overlook in the biblical narrative is there is a full-blown occult paradigm, occult religion already in operation going, and it's global. It's not only in Egypt, it is global. And that's what they're up against because, they go there and Moses, most of us know the story, but we fail to see the implications. Moses throws down a staff and it becomes a serpent. And the Egyptian magicians go, well, that's no big deal. They throw down their staffs and that becomes a serpent.
Sure.
So, we see this full-blown occult paradigm already in operation thousands of years ago. Where is it from? Where is the source? And now, fast forward to 2015, Baphomet in Detroit. Need I say more?
Yeah, I just came back from the British Museum, LA, and London, and they must have a seriously large collection on every culture from Assyria, Greeks, Romans, Minoans. There isn't a culture in that museum, LA, where you see the serpent on a vessel or the serpents being worshipped, and it's there in the record. Nearly every culture you'll see some sort of representation for the serpent. I think you're right, LA. I think at some point there was a trade-off knowledge for the serpent knowledge or the serpent wisdom. But everything comes at a price, no matter what it is in this world. So what that price is, I think people have to at least ask the question. They have to at least address that question, and they're not even addressing the question. They're not even taking it into account.
They just lay down and who cares? What's for dinner tonight? And,
that's where we're at. LA. Where are we at in the world? Let's talk about the Watcher series. It's still going. I believe you're on season 8. Is that correct?
No, we're actually working on 9.
9 now. Wow, I can't keep up with you, bro.
We're in post-production on 9. We've done all of our interviews, and in fact, this week we'll probably cut the open. There's a few things that we have to talk about that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
But, we'll address that in Watchers 9.
Wow.
Lots going on.
Did you ever see
Madonna at the end? Basically, it's like a satanic ritualistic sacrifice. Now, if people say that's all in good fun and it's not. I mean, there's a Luciferian agenda that's alive and well on this planet. And the fact that the Baphomet statue is being unveiled in Detroit, and the title of my blog today was, "This is how far down the rabbit hole we are." This is how far down the rabbit hole we are. Sure. It's blatantly displayed in the Grammys. It's blatantly displayed at American football time, and specifically the Super Bowl. I mean, it's in our faces constantly. Unless the Christian church stands up and begins to push back, all is lost.
Yeah, it's say goodbye bye to calmness. This is going into, you know, I'm stupefied that there's actual tangible statues of Baphomet being worshipped now. It's like it's in the public domain. It's not just something elusive in the movie industry now, where it's like, you know, are we going to start honoring statues of Baphomet? I mean, have we dropped our brains out? Is that where the public's
going? This is literally a sign of one of the signs that's in a 2,000-year-old prophecy, or very close to a 2,000-year-old prophecy, which states that in the end of days, in the last days, end times, they will leave the truth and go after the doctrines of demons. That's specifically what it says, and that's exactly what we see happening now. We've got in America, if you go back, let's say 50 years, there wasn't a palm reader in every town or a psychic in every town. They are everywhere. In almost every city, every town, you'll see a shingle, palm reader, fortune teller, tarot, whatever. I mean, this thing is, we are being inundated with it. Eastern mysticism came in the 60s, unfortunately with the Beatles, but that's what brought it into